Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia back with the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Back with me today on this episode of the Jungle Roar pod is Kelsey Conway, the terrific beat reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer covering the Cincinnati Bengals. Kelsey, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm trying to be like Zac Taylor. You know what I mean by that?
Why? Optimistic?
Yes, optimistic and maintaining purpose to my every step in life. And that's what he was doing on Monday when he said that there is still hope for a special season. And you and me were both in the room with Zac when he said it. And the question was asked towards the end of the press conference. And I thought it was, for him, for Zac, a very typical positive tone on the answer to that question. But obviously he wants to maintain a purpose for his players because there are still 6 games to be played in this season. They're 5-6. Everybody knows what the hard, cold reality, the cold, hard truth of this Bengals season is. They don't have Joe Burrow anymore. He's out. And I just want to get your read to start this podcast, what you thought of what Zac said and what he's trying to do in terms of keeping the team together.
I mean, would you expect anything different from a head
No,
coach of a football team? They're going to say that they're going to, and they will. Every coach is going to try and do everything they can to put themselves in a position to win the game. I thought Zac was shockingly more optimistic yesterday than I anticipated him to be,
Agreed.
simply because you know how coaches can be sometimes after they lose games, important games. But I think for him, he knows that if he gets negative, the team is this close to checking out. So he's trying to do everything he can as the leader to keep the team together. So yeah, I wasn't expecting anything different from Zac, but I will say he was more optimistic. But like, it is what it is at this point this season. Obviously, Joe's injury changed the landscape of the season, but these guys are all still professionals and they have a job to do, and their futures, a lot of them, and if it's going to be in Cincinnati, is dependent on if they're able to do what they need to do on the field, because the Bengals are going to have to make some tough decisions after this season. So really nobody should, take the angle of, this isn't, just because playoffs are a little bit out of reach, it's time for us to check out. Like, there's too much on the line for that to happen for everyone involved.
I guess, and it's always dangerous to do this, Kelsey, but reading some of the reaction online, it's like people lose their mind because he's doing exactly what you've just said. He's maintaining a professional and, in this particular case, perhaps overly positive attitude, but what else is he going to do? And fans lose their mind. Like, can't he see that the ship is burning around him, that the ship is sinking around him? Can't they see that? And I'm like, well, you want a coach that keeps the room together and keeps players playing hard. And the other thing that I pointed out in my column for this morning was one of the reasons that players love playing for Zac Taylor, good, bad, or indifferent in terms of the fans, is that he has their back. And I thought, one of the best examples this season was how he made a point of defending Logan Wilson last week after the injuries that certainly the Mark Andrews injury in the Baltimore game and 2 other injuries, one to Lamar Jackson and the other to Odell Beckham Jr. It's that Zac Taylor has their back, and I think it's important for a coach to kind of convey that message to the players.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why Joe Burrow and Logan Wilson have said they only want to play for Zac Taylor in their career. It's because he understands that he has to have a good relationship with his players for them to be the team he wants them to be. And I think that's one of Zac's strong suits, is his ability to relate and connect with the players. As far as like fan reaction, no coach is going to get up there and dog their players. That to me doesn't scream a good coach. So although
No.
I know people look at it like if Zac doesn't say, we can't run the ball because X, and X person, like, they know what's going on. Just because he doesn't say it publicly doesn't mean they don't know exactly who's responsible for everything that's not going right. And there's a lot of people that have hands in that. And that's kind of what I wrote on Sunday night, is that the Bengals run game failures isn't just on one person. It's an organizational failure to
Right.
what happened this year, because it touches Duke Tobin, it touches Zac Taylor, it touches Frank Pollock, it touches Brian Callahan, it touches Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, Travion Williams, it touches the offensive line. So like it's a it's not just one person. And that's why when Brian Callahan and Zac Taylor says we need to get more in the run game, that is them putting everyone involved in that on notice.
So, great segue, Kelsey, because I want, and you were in the room with me and Brian Callahan and several other reporters on Monday, and I still don't understand really why Chase Brown didn't get a touch, why he didn't run the ball once. And granted, the Bengals only had, I believe, 37 offensive snaps. They had more than that if you include the punts and the one field goal that they had. But why didn't Chase Brown? Do you have any better understanding today, Tuesday, 2 days removed from the game, why Chase Brown didn't touch the ball on Sunday?
Well, all we can go off of is what the offensive coordinator said. And he said they had plays that they were planning to get him involved in that they just didn't get to.
Right.
So
I don't know
that
how to read that. I still don't know what
t-
that means
to
because
me, that read, because the Bengals were so ineffective on first down, they kept finding themselves in second and nines and
yeah,
third and tens. And they weren't even going to run Mixon in those situations. And I think it goes to a bigger question in what type of running back is Chase Brown going to be? Because if they don't think he can get them 7 or 8 yards, and that's why he's not going to be a first down back, is he going to be a featured receiving, like, third down scat back? What is his role on this team? And I don't know how you know what it is if you don't play him. So that's why the one encouraging thing that listeners and fans that have that same question is, I think he's going to play more this
yes,
game and, throughout the rest of the season. I think that goes for Chase Brown and Charlie Jones. You have to know what you are getting in those two guys in specific,
no
because of
question.
who you're likely going to move on from in the offseason. Is Charlie Jones good enough to replace Tyler Boyd? Do you believe in him enough? Is Chase Brown good enough to be your number one back if you move on from Mixon this offseason? Those are questions they don't know yet. And that's why it's like they're going to try and win every game, but they definitely have to take of an approach of, we've also got to find out what we have in some of our players. And wouldn't you rather do it now versus week 3 or 4 next year and have one of them make like a critical play against a team that ends up being an important win or loss in the playoff race? Like, now's the time to do it, is what my point is.
No question. I think that's a great point. And to add a little more context to what you just said, Chase Brown was not going to take Joe Mixon's reps on first down on Sunday. That's the other way to read what Brian Callahan was saying. To your point is we still believe in Joe Mixon. I asked the question after the game to Zac Taylor, and Zac said point blank, don't make this about Joe Mixon. Well, if that's the case, then Chase Brown wasn't going to get, at least on Sunday against Pittsburgh, he was not going to get those reps against the Steelers. I'm just curious because it's so tough to run the ball against a team like Pittsburgh, against their front. They're a very difficult team to run against, as are the Ravens, as is pretty much every team in the AFC North, as we've seen, and the Bengals just haven't had answers. That's another question I have for you, Kelsey. Do you, and I think you made reference to this on Monday, do the Bengals need to start behaving like the other three AFC North teams? What I mean by that is, do they need to start limiting possessions? Do they need to start grinding games out and putting less of the burden on Joe Burrow?
Well, that's what I asked Brian Callahan
Yep, you
yesterday.
did.
Um, and I don't really know how he took my question, based off his answer, but I just it's a hard thing to analyze right now because the Bengals are back-to-back AFC champions, right? But that's only been 2 years, whereas teams like Pittsburgh and Baltimore, like, have I mean, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season, right? Like, so you can say that the Steelers are gross and the way they play is, like, everybody
By
kinda,
the
like,
way,
rolls their eyes.
not to interrupt you, leader in the clubhouse for NFL Coach of the Year. Yes. Oh,
Yes. Um And but my point is like it's about sustained success year after year. And the Steelers and Ravens and even the Browns this year have been able to win games with a backup quarterback because the rest of their team is built to win. And so, yes, the Bengals got really lucky with their style the last 2 years. I don't think it's a long-term style that's gonna suit this team year in and year out because I just think that you're too reliant upon Joe to drop back 40, 45 times a
yep.
game, and that's just a recipe for, like, a disaster in my opinion. Although it might be really efficient, but you have to start playing the long-term game and thinking about in our division, all we do is say possessions are limited against the Browns, the Ravens, the Steelers. It's the same old from the Bengals coaching staff about their AFC North games. And it's like, when does anybody ever say, well, possessions are limited against the Bengals because we know they're going to score every drive? They don't say that because
Nope.
it's really hard to score
They
every
don't.
drive. And the Bengals have been very inconsistent. So it's like, what are the Bengals going to evolve? The NFL is the biggest adapt or die league. If you do not adapt in the NFL, like, yes, you had great success for 2 years, dropping Burrow back 45 times a game. Jamar Chase, nobody could cover Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Okay, that's going to all change this offseason. T. Higgins is likely to be somewhere else next year. Um, Tyler Boyd's likely to be somewhere else. Like, the three-headed monster is going to be broken up. Sorry to tell Bengals fans, but it's just the truth.
Well,
Um,
no question. That's just the reality of the economics of the situation. There's no question.
right. So, is this going to be the off season where they schematically look at what they have and develop more of an identity on offense that is about possession and being able to run the ball better? And being able to run the ball better might change in terms of who you pick for your running back, who you they're going to be in the market for a right tackle and a left guard. Do you, when you're looking at those offensive linemen, start paying more attention to how they are in run blocking and really do they change their run scheme again? There's so many questions, but I think the Bengals have got to find a way from a philosophy standpoint to be able to control the ball more and get more physical on both sides of the line of scrimmage because right now they are the fourth, like, they're the worst in the division in terms of physicality. Every other team is more physical than the Bengals. And yes, they had their 2-year run, but 9 times out of 10, the more physical team that controls the clock is going to be the team that not just has these fluke years, sustained success, 8 to 9 to 10 wins every year. And that should be what they want here with Joe Burrow and Zac Taylor.
Hey, football fans, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than now to get in on all the action. And the app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on all of the fun action this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
So I had an NFL executive who I respect very much talked to me before the Tennessee playoff game a couple of years ago. And he said Burrow is one of the smartest quarterbacks he's ever seen. However, that person was very concerned about the number of hits that Joe Burrow had already taken, and that was in 2021, and the number of hits that he might be taking going forward if the Bengals didn't have a good running game to protect him. And as we saw this year, he kept getting hit. He kept getting hit, and eventually Jadeveon Clowney ended, essentially for all intents and purposes, ended his season. And I guess my point about the run game is there are other successful quarterbacks who pass a lot, who have the threat of a run game. Joe Burrow does not have that, which is why all of these teams have no hesitation right now, Kelsey, of just pinning their ears back and going after the quarterback in different stunts, double A gap, off the edge. We've seen the Bengals, have trouble with a lot of edge rushers, but they've had a lot of trouble protecting Burrow up the middle. There's been no threat of a run game. Until the Bengals fix that, I think Joe Burrow is not going to see his potential as, I feel, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. What say you?
I mean, I agree. I think that, like you said, and remember I asked Brian Callahan about that graphic about the Andrew Luck hits
Yes.
and the amount of hits he's taking. And again, they're like, it's a off-season conversation. But I just think that every year they should be drafting offensive linemen in the top first to 3 rounds every year. And I know it's not sexy, and I know fans want to fall in love with X tight end and this person. If you draft the best offensive and defensive linemen available in the first 1 through 3, you'll always have a chance, and it'll always give Burrow the chance to be the best he can be, because Burrow can make a 4th round receiver look good. He can.
Yeah, no, it's a
So
great point, Kelsey.
I'd rather take a 1st or 2nd round offensive lineman versus a 4th rounder like Cordell Volson, where it's yeah, he was okay and now he's regressing. Build through the trenches, protect the investment, and that
couldn't
is
agree
Joe
more.
Burrow.
My issue with Cordell Volson is I think he is a very good run blocker, and he actually had a pretty decent pass blocking game this past game, but that certainly has not been the case all season, no question about that. But I think they draft a people mover like he was at North Dakota State, and then they don't use him that way when he gets here, and they just don't have enough downhill run schemes built in for a guy like Cordell Volson. Then you ask the question, okay, why did you draft him if you're not going to use him and put him toward the strength he was designed to play toward? And so, again, that's an off-season question. We can get to that in a little, down the road. But I want to get to the defense. And DJ Reader spoke on Monday in the locker room, and he really did bite his tongue. He didn't want to get into a lot of the specifics of what's gone wrong, why is this year so different for this defense as opposed to the last 2 years when they were able to come up with big stops and not be so reliant on the turnover. Every team needs turnovers, but this team, the Bengal team, if they don't get the turnovers, they have no chance of stopping anybody. And I think you could see the frustration on DJ Reader's face. What are your biggest takeaways of the defensive failures this year, Kelsey?
That is something I can't quite put my finger on. Because I wasn't expecting it, and they returned so many players that were really good last year. It's easy to say how much they miss Vaughn and Jesse,
Right.
but
That's part of it, but not
it's not the
nearly the
whole
whole
thing.
story.
Yeah.
Correct.
I just think that they don't have enough interior dogs. DJ can't play the amount of snaps at 30 years old that he could at 24. And the Bengals did no favors to themselves by not replacing someone behind him, knowing that he was going into the final year of his contract. That, to me, them not taking a tight end or an interior defensive lineman were the two biggest surprises to me in the draft, because I was like, it's likely that like you're not going to be able to sign DJ Rader to another extension, nor I don't know if they want to. But he'll be pricey. So like how do you not have a rookie behind him that DJ can mentor that can also get you 15, 20 snaps a game behind him? And like if you look at when the Bengals defensive line was the best, it was the year they went to the Super Bowl when they had Larry Ogunjobi as that third piece, and it was Larry, DJ, and BJ, and like they were just vicious. Now you're asking DJ and BJ to play more snaps because the guys behind them just haven't developed. Like
You
Zach
think
Carter
they're
just
run down?
hasn't.
It's that simple. They're run down.
I think they're run down and they're on the field all the time. And I think there's just not enough depth on the interior defensive line, and teams are able to key in on Trey. And then when Sam was out, it was like, who scares you up front?
No one. I mean, I think those are all very, very valid points. You bring up not drafting defensive, a defensive tackle behind DJ and BJ. I very much agree with that. The tight end situation, once Dalton Kincaid went off the board, Dalton Kincaid went off the board, I don't think they valued anybody else there who they felt were going to spend draft capital on taking. I think they had their sights set on one, maybe two tight ends, and once they were off the board, and Joe doesn't throw to tight ends much to begin with. It would have been great to have a tight end as a weapon, but I just don't see that as a priority right now in this offense. I think it should be. I think that'd be, by the way, another way to help protect Joe. But anyway, all over the map here. I just think that, there are so many issues with regard to the Bengals' depth on their roster. They've got to address that in the offseason. And I think to your point, Kelsey, earlier, we're going to find out a lot about what they think about the depth on their roster, and they're going to be shown a lot about their roster in these final 6 games. That's probably the biggest thing to watch for over the final 6 weeks.
Yeah. But I will say that, remember, Zac Taylor said this is the deepest roster that he's ever had in Cincinnati. So,
yep. Well, no, great point, Kelsey. And I think a lot of us, very objectively looked at this roster in June, July, even in May after the draft was over, and looked at it like this is a pretty deep roster, simply because that you already had star players who had proven success at a high level, a team that had gone to the AFC Championship 2 years in a row, one play away from winning a Super Bowl, and you thought everything was lined up. And then, certainly the age of the defensive line has, I think, been a concern, and they're going to have to start getting younger along the defensive line. And you're going to have guys like Miles Murphy, obviously, who else?
Joseph Osai.
Thank you. They've got to get something out of him that's more, that more resembles the way he came out of the gates in his rookie year before he got hurt in that one preseason game, the way he played at the start of his second season. They haven't seen anything close to that. And that's another question, I think, Kelsey, just real quick, your thoughts on why hasn't Joseph Osai, developed this year?
It's the $1 million question. I don't know. I asked Lou Anarumo, did you expect him to be further along at this point? And he said, yeah. So I wish I knew more about it. I don't understand where the inconsistencies with his game lie. But his playing time and the fact that he was, playing in that preseason game, and Zach said it, he needed the snaps. Like, they don't know what he is on a consistent basis.
I was stunned by that then. I'm still stunned by it now. Why he doesn't get on the field more, why he isn't an impact player, at least in third down situations where it's pin your ears, just go after the quarterback, get to the quarterback. And maybe he's thinking too much out there and he's, very indecisive. Let me ask you this. Do you think that play in the AFC Championship game has impacted him at all?
No. I think, I want to be careful because I don't want to like speak for something I don't know of, but based off what Lou Anarumo said, like his injuries have been a problem for him, but his ankle's been healed for months now. So I don't know why he can't put it together. But again, and we'll have time to talk about it on another podcast, but like if you start going back through their defensive lineman draft choices over the last couple of years, haven't been good.
Nope.
They've nailed the secondary in terms of Dax. I don't think we know really what Dax is yet, but Cam Taylor, Britt, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, good picks. Defensive line.
By the way, maybe even DJ Ivy. He doesn't get on the field much, but I think there's a potential that might have been a steal, in the 7th round, I believe it was. Yeah.
But up front,
nope.
They gotta figure it out because they don't have the money right now to go out and buy defensive linemen because of who they're going to have to pay at wide receiver soon.
What are you working on? Anything coming up this week?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be talking to Zac Taylor's parents with his upcoming matchup against his brother Press. His parents are going to be talking to me, and I'm going to do a piece on the family ahead of Monday's game.
That is excellent. I assume the trophy that he referenced on Monday will be part of that conversation.
Yes,
I'm sure it will. Well, I'll look forward to reading that, as everybody should look forward to reading that in your coverage in the Cincinnati Enquirer and Cincinnati.com. Kelsey, thanks for joining me on this podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, Trags.
All right, Kelsey. That's Kelsey Conway. You can follow her on Twitter, X, at Kelsey L. Conway, correct? I got that right?
You did get that right.
Okay, thank God. Kelsey L. Conway on Twitter, X. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. Thanks for downloading this episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered as always by FanDuel Sportsbook, the exclusive online wagering partner of CLNS Media Network. Until next week, keep that jungle roaring.
FanDuel is the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.